Stop.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Breault. My last name is spelled Breault. I am the police chief of the city of South Burlington. Joining me tonight is Jesse Baker, the city manager for South Burlington, Captain Mike Filipek from Vermont State Police, and Chief Shawn Burke from the Burlington Police Department. We are here tonight to give you an update and a briefing from the local law enforcement perspective on the federal immigration enforcement action that occurred today on Dorset Street. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the fear that today's incident caused in the greater community. We understand we have neighbors who are very, very concerned, and rightfully so, about the actions of federal law enforcement today. The South Burlington Police Department and our local and state partners worked today to ensure that people had the right to peacefully demonstrate those actions, as well as maintain overall public safety, to include the safety of the federal agents who were enforcing a criminal warrant. So this morning at approximately 7:38 a.m., the South Burlington Police Dispatch Center received a 911 call of a motor vehicle accident in the area of 345 Dorset Street involving multiple vehicles. When our officers arrived, they located an unoccupied vehicle with extensive damage in the northbound lane of Dorset Street in the area of Brookwood Drive. Officers located a second damaged vehicle in the southbound lane of Dorset Street further up the road facing southbound in the area of 435 Dorset Street, which is the area directly across from the South Burlington High School and Middle School. Our officers and command staff went to the scene, and we quickly identified through a preliminary investigation that federal ICE agents, unbeknownst to us prior to that time, were in the area attempting to apprehend an individual believed to be associated with the area of 337 Dorset Street. That vehicle fled on, and that individual believed to be in the vehicle fled on foot. ICE attempted to stop that vehicle, and at one point attempted to box it in the subsequent crash occurred. Individuals from the vehicle that fled the ICE agents were witnessed by federal agents returning to 337 Dorset Street and entering that building. At approximately 8:45 a.m., ICE agents requested the assistance from the South Burlington Police Department due to a loud and what they reported to us as a hostile crowd of people on that property. We responded, again, not to assist ICE at that moment, but to ensure that people had the ability to peacefully protest and that traffic and other issues weren't becoming a problem. We had contact with ICE throughout the morning. They indicated to us that they were going to remain in the area and obtain a federal criminal warrant for an individual associated with fleeing this morning. They did that. As the crowd continued to grow, we monitored the crowd. Our South Burlington police officers had numerous interactions with members of the crowd, explained our purpose for being there, which was to make sure that they had the right to peacefully protest. We were made aware that the crowd was continuing to become larger, and that the federal agents, when they obtained their federal criminal warrant related to the immigration issue, they planned on making entry. We wanted to, because of the size of the crowd and because of ICE forcing entry into a home, we wanted to make sure that the community, the greater community, stayed safe, and that those agents could safely execute their federal arrest warrant. I reached out to our state and federal our state and local partners. We established a joint incident command, and we put a plan in place to ensure that that could be done as safely as possible. So the state police worked with us, and at approximately 5:20 this afternoon, representatives from Immigration and Customs Enforcement advised the large crowd that was there, verbally notified them of the federal arrest order that was signed by a United States judge here in Vermont. and telling them that ICE agents would be approaching the home to attempt to make that arrest. At approximately 5:25, federal agents armed with the arrest warrant began making entry into the residence. As federal agents attempted to execute the warrant, local law enforcement and state police personnel were there to ensure and approached behind ICE to ensure that the agents could safely do that. We didn't want agents being assaulted by protesters, and we certainly wanted to ensure that people that were not directly party to the federal warrant were not inadvertently detained or anything like that. So our goal was really to maintain public peace and ensure that people that were there had the right to peacefully demonstrate. A part of Dorset Street was shut down early this afternoon and remained closed throughout this event because of the large crowd and the federal vehicles that were there. We did invite ICE and federal representatives that were involved today to this press conference, but they did not accept our invitation. I will now turn it over to Captain Filipek from the Vermont State Police, who can discuss the assistance they provided.
Good evening. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Early this afternoon, we were requested to come provide assistance to here in South Burlington, and our mission upon that request is to make sure that we are protecting First Amendment rights, that we're protecting free speech, while at the same time providing public safety. And our initial response consisted of troopers that were on duty, responded here, and they began providing support, interacting with members that were here or that were members of the protest, exercising their First Amendment rights, interacting with them for hours on scene, and trying to understand what their goals and objectives were. And it became clear that they did not intend to leave, that they were going to occupy that space, which was on private property. So then we began to coordinate further with our municipal departments and our federal counterparts as well. The federal counterparts got an arrest warrant signed, as the chief mentioned, and they planned on executing that arrest warrant on scene. And so our job was to make sure that that could be done safely. With the underpinning theme here is public safety, ensuring that the people that wanted to demonstrate their rights on scene could remain safe, and that the law enforcement that was going to be present on scene could also do their job safely. Our troopers that were on scene worked closely with our counterparts to make sure that we made that happen today. One of our specialized units that did arrive on scene was the Critical Action Team, also referred to as CAT. And those members are specially trained and equipped to deal with crowds and dynamic atmospheres. So when the federal partners gave their orders and arrived on scene, that those were the resources that were deployed up front to ensure that the federal counterparts could exercise their operation safely. Moving forward, they executed their warrant, and all VSP remained on the outside of the property, and we remained on scene until their operations were finished. When their operations were finished and they moved back to their vehicles, we ensured that not only that they could get out of there safely, but that we could as well. That's all I have. Good? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain. I will say that no state or local law enforcement entered the residence. We did not participate in the actual execution of the criminal warrant. We followed our fair and impartial policing mandates from the state. All local and state agencies did. We were there simply to keep the public safe, to allow them to peacefully protest, and to ensure that the federal agents could execute their criminal arrest warrant. as safely as possible. It was clear, and there was conversations about potential other ways to effect this criminal arrest warrant, but understand that local law enforcement has no control over ICE agents or federal immigration status, and they were going to execute the warrant the way they executed the warrant. That was not, and it would not have been how I would have done it. I will be clear about that. From the beginning, this plan was not executed to the standard that local law enforcement here in South Burlington and I'm sure the chief from Burlington and the state police would agree, not how we would do things. Unfortunately, we were put in a position to ensure once it was happening that the safety of the community was paramount and that people had the right to protest, which is what we did. But we are not, and I want to make it clear, we are not enforcing federal immigration statutes. We are not doing that. That's not what we did here today. Our local partners and the South Burlington Police Department simply ensured that people had the right to peacefully protest and that those federal agents could do their job safely, and we didn't take a bad situation and compound it and make it worse. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'd like to ask, a number of people, additional people, protesters, were detained throughout the day. We just a couple of them. Are any people still in detainment for Vermont State Police or local enforcement? Or?
There are no people currently, so 4 people were detained by local law enforcement for a host of things which we are still parsing out, and that those cases will be reviewed by the state's attorney's office. But most of those offenses, generally speaking, were for hindering or for disorderly conduct. Those people were all released from custody. Nobody is in state or local custody related to this incident.
Facing charges? Or is it?
Potentially facing charges. We are still reviewing that. The officers who detain those individuals will like in any criminal case, write up a probable cause affidavit, and that will be reviewed by the state's attorney's office.
Did you express to federal partners that the manner in which they decided to execute this warrant? I mean, I'm inferring from your response, you thought that was perhaps not the safest way to go about it. Did you express that to them?
Yes, unequivocally, I did. Like I said, you need to understand that I do not have, nor does any of our counterparts here up on the stage have the authority to order them not to. And quite frankly, when we got involved, this ball was already put in motion by some of their poor decision making and planning. That being what it is at this moment, we again wanted to make sure that it didn't get worse, and that the community had the right to peacefully demonstrate, and that the agents could, if they were going to execute their warrant, we could let them do so as safely as possible.
You said poor decision-making and planning. Could you describe that in more detail? What is it specifically that you think federal officials did incorrectly today?
Well, I think, the fact that there's no concern given to the general area to try to attempt an arrest, particularly in of a subject in a moving vehicle on Dorset Street in the area of a high school and middle school at 7:45 in the morning when the school is getting in, was not probably the most appropriate way to handle that. There was probably there should have been more consideration given to the general safety of the community. That was my concern.
Is that so restricted to the morning activities? Do you feel like federal authorities acted properly this afternoon and evening in the way that they entered the house? You indicated that that's not how you would have done it. Can you describe what they did incorrectly in your view? I
will let them speak to why they did what they did. I will tell you that we did have a conversation about other potential investigative ways where they could have potentially taken this person into custody. Again, I offered my suggestions, as did others, but our federal partners, particularly with ICE, they did have a authorized federal criminal arrest warrant, which gave them authority. It was legal. It gave them authority to execute it. And again, I have no direct authority or control over how they operate.
But
I-
what specifically this evening do you think they did wrong in the way they served that warrant?
I think given the size of the crowd and given the potential for additional public safety concerns, there should have been potentially more thought given to was taking this person into custody at this moment fully necessary, or could that have been done through other investigative means? And I'll leave it at that, and I'll refer you to them to explain why they made the decisions they made.
Am I understanding correctly that the decision to, as you described it, maintain a presence in the spirit of safety, public safety, that's a judgment call, a matter of discretion on the part of local and state law enforcement, and so I'd like you to elaborate on why you thought that was the right call to make, as opposed to letting DHS and ICE, execute that on their own. Presumably, they have the resources
Sure.
they could bring to bear.
Sure. Quite frankly, these are residents and our neighbors and our community members, and I take my obligation to ensure the safety of our general community very seriously, and that doesn't stop just because it's a federal agency that's executing a warrant. In this case, I thought that the best way to do that was to make sure protect people's First Amendment rights to publicly demonstrate, but also understanding that if ICE was going to execute this warrant, it was done in as safe a manner as possible, given what I'm charged with, which is the general public safety of the community. ICE does not have the authority to shut down roads or to do those other things. It quickly became apparent to me that the size of the crowd and the potential for additional violence was becoming more of a concern, which is why I reached out to our partners behind me and asked for assistance.
Could you let us know how many people responded from local law enforcement and state police?
I don't have a total number. Yeah, probably about 60 total law enforcement officers,
And
local law enforcement officers.
Thank you. And given that this was essentially a federal agents trying to issue a warrant and arrest somebody, the kind of response this amounted to in the community, did you think it was appropriate?
I am not going to speak to, like I've already said, I think more thought should have been given in prior to any operation being happening. More thought should have been placed on overall public safety. I think given the size of the crowd and what ICE was going to do, yes, I think our response was not only appropriate, I am incredibly proud of not only the members of the South Burlington Police Department, but our state and local partners, and how each and every one of those officers acted on the scene, treated people with dignity and respect, and did not use force, did not intervene unnecessarily. We were there again to really ensure that things went as peacefully as possible given the circumstances.
We witnessed use of force. The community witnessed use of force when they saw our live stream. Do you know, based on your experience and what your officers witnessed, what use of force was used and by which department?
That is all part of our individual department's review of the incident. We will review that. My understanding is that no weapons were, lethal or non-lethal weapons were used. If there was use of force used, I know pepper spray was used by federal agents, not by local law enforcement. And again, I will refer you to ICE and to our federal partners to get those answers. We are all, as we would with any use of force in any arrest, we are reviewing that internally to make sure that use of force, if it did happen, happened appropriately and followed all, not only internal policies, but state statute.
And you mentioned federal criminal charges and that there was a warrant that was signed by a federal judge. You said that there was a criminal charge of fleeing, but you also said fleeing a vehicle, but you also said there was a immigration issue. Do you know what the exact federal
I
criminal charge is?
I don't, and I didn't say there was a charge for fleeing. I said what happened was he fled this morning. I don't know what those federal charges are, other than there was a federal felony level criminal warrant issued for the individual related to his immigration status. That is what I know. And again, I will refer you to ICE or the United States Attorney's Office for the formal charge.
One more follow-up.
Sure.
Was it an incident that happened today or in the past?
In the past.
Okay.
Captain Filipek, if I could, I believe you said that no state police were on the property, but in fact, did I mishear you on that?
Yeah, yes. State police were on the property.
And in the house?
Negative.
Do
No, state police did not enter the house.
you want to see a photo of state police in the house? I mean, literally a photograph of a guy with state police on his back entering the house.
Okay. My understanding from today is that the arrest warrant that was conducted was executed by federal law enforcement.
Do you want to just take a quick look at this and maybe you can just explain to me?
Was on the scene. Maybe she could spell it for us.
Do you see that right there?
Okay. So, yes, and Captain Munson might be able to provide some more information on that. So the picture that was just shown to me was looks to be a state trooper. I can see the state trooper name placard on the back standing by the threshold.
Entering the house, yeah.
Okay, so my understanding is that I don't know exactly when that photo was taken or what exactly transpired prior to that. That there was one point in time when the federal agents that were inside the house were trying to communicate with everybody outside of the house, and it was very loud on scene. And so I think some communication was done through shouting back and forth.
I think someone suggested that Captain Munson might have more details. Would that be appropriate to hear from her about why the state police trooper was in the house?
Sure.
I think if I can just interject real quickly, we are providing you information. This incident just concluded. We are doing this to ensure that we are being as transparent as we possibly can, given the information that is really still being gathered. We are giving you the information as it's known to us at this time. Like I said, each individual agency up here will conduct a review of what their personnel did. My understanding is that no state or local officers went into the residence. And again, that's the information we have at this time. That might, as the captain said, that there may be a valid reason for that, and that might not be completely accurate. We are still reviewing what all of our people did. But we thought it would be more important to come out here and explain why local and state law enforcement were even there today and what our primary goal of being there was. I will now.
Captain Munson, did you want to address that as well?
Yes, I'd just like to clarify that a little, being on scene. So yes, state police did enter physically into that residence. It was into the threshold for, as Captain Filipek said, for communications. It was not to help affect the arrest of anything. It was for communications and to hold that threshold of that doorway. That's why the state police entered the house, and they did not go beyond that or go into the home further to affect an arrest. Is that clarifying?
Or I'd just like to follow up on the same point, please. So having that CAT team or the people in tactical gear at the threshold to facilitate or for whatever reason that they were there, did that maintain the state's fair and impartial public policy regarding cooperation with immigration authorities?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it did.
Folks, it's coming up on 10 o'clock, so I think we can take one more question and then we'll have to end it for tonight.
I wanted to clarify, and this is for the South Burlington Chief, sorry. When you decided to maintain a presence for public safety purposes during the execution of the warrant and after, is that something that the federal law enforcement requested that you do?
They initially requested us to respond to the scene because they were concerned for their safety. That's what initially brought us out there once we made contact with the crowd and ensured that and realized the crowd was getting larger. We maintain our presence there really to ensure that people had the right to peacefully protest. I
I
think I made that
understand your
pretty clear.
rationale for it. I'm wondering if they asked you, if they told you, we're gonna do this anyway, can you stay on scene to help make sure we can do it effectively?
No, they made it clear that they were going to do that. I made the decision. They did not ask us to stay on scene. I made the decision that it would be in the best interest of the safety of our own community to ensure that we maintained a presence there, as well as to ensure that the officers could safely execute that warrant.
One follow-up.
Thanks,
When
everybody.
was the
We
last
appreciate
time
you coming.
this many people responded to an event in the Burlington area? Can you think of an example?
Yeah, I'll just say briefly, I just want to acknowledge Shawn Burke, Interim Chief of Police, City of Burlington, that first, we've got a vast number of neighbors that are living in fear because of these federal immigration enforcement efforts. And really what these things do when they come to town is pit local police agencies against the communities that we're entrusted to serve. And these are very difficult decisions that we have to make in terms of respecting the rule of law in terms of federal immigration law enforcement, and then what we have to do to make sure that there's venue for the exercise of First Amendment speech. There are countless numbers of times where we'll work in concert with agencies, whether it's a major civic event, whether it's a barricaded subject that we're going to work through a complicated situation with, and we need that support, or things that unfold today. This is not the first time that this group has convened to talk about this. It was clear to us earlier here in 2026 that we would likely face one of these operations, and that's why we were able to bring the resources to bear that we did. These are things that we don't want to do, but we feel compelled to do for the entire safety of the community. But I just need to really highlight this point that when these operations come to your city, it pits local police against the community that we're entrusted to serve. And these are very, very difficult decisions. And all of these incidents will undergo a thorough review, and we'll look for areas of improvement, look for areas where maybe the fair and impartial policing policy that was engineered in the exact reverse of what played out today, it precludes us from sharing information essentially. But then that tips when a federal immigration agent has a criminal warrant. So this is very complicated. We're going to need several days to take this all apart.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.